it's time to review this butchery of Tolkien's work.
Anyway,
The Rings of Power Season 1 is a disaster on nearly every level, betraying Tolkien's legacy and disappointing fans everywhere. From the destruction of beloved characters like Galadriel to the disrespect shown toward Tolkien's world, this show is an insult to the source material. And just so you know, I'm planning to drop some terrible puns along the way. You have been warned. Where to begin? Let's start with Galadriel. Galadriel's transformation into a reckless warrior is like turning Frodo into Boromir. Galadriel is one of Tolkien's most respected characters, known for her wisdom, grace, and powerful presence. But in the Rings of Power, she's become something completely different. A reckless warrior who takes down trolls without breaking a sweat. Instead of the wise leader we know, she's now just a generic action hero charging into battle without thinking twice. It's like they've taken all the things that made her special and thrown them into the fires of Mount Doom. The show reduces her to a flat one-note character, stripping away the depth and complexity that made her so memorable. It feels like the creators didn't trust the audience to appreciate a powerful female character who doesn't rely on brute strength. If this version of Galadriel feels like a major letdown, consider subscribing and smashing that like button. Maybe we can save some of Middle-earth's dignity together. The show's treatment of Tolkien's world is like Saruman's treatment of the Ents. Tolkien's world is a masterpiece filled with rich history and deep lore, but the Rings of Power doesn't respect that at all, making up stories and characters that don't fit in Middle-earth. Instead of showing us the epic battles and key events that shaped Middle-earth, like the War of the Last Alliance or the Fall of Númenor, the show gives us a made-up story about Galadriel's adventures that never even happened in Tolkien's books. What a waste of such incredible source material. They could have told us the real story of how Sauron tricked the elves and forged the One Ring, but instead we got this shallow, uninspired tale. It's like they skipped the epic parts and gave us the movie equivalent of Second Breakfast, but not in a good way. The forced diversity in the show stands out like a cave troll in the Shire. Diversity can definitely add depth to a story, but in the Rings of Power, it feels forced and out of place. Characters seem to be added just to tick off diversity checkboxes, rather than to truly enhance the story. This approach makes it hard to stay immersed in the world of Middle-earth. Every time you remember you're watching a modern production instead of a faithful adaptation. Diversity should add to the story, not distract from it. But here it feels like it's been shoved in at the expense of good storytelling. The pacing and writing are as slow and plodding as Treebeard's speech. The pacing in this show is all over the place. Some scenes drag on longer than Gollum's obsession with the ring, while others are so rushed you barely know what's happening. And don't get me started on the writing, it's filled with awkward one-liners that sound more like bad fan fiction than anything worthy of Middle-earth. The male characters are forgettable and seem to exist only to make the poorly written female leads look better. There's no balance or subtlety, just a clumsy attempt to force a narrative that doesn't feel true to Tolkien's world. The reveals of the Stranger and Halbrand are as obvious as Sauron's giant flaming eye. The character of the Stranger, who's clearly a homeless Gandalf, is introduced in a way that's both disrespectful and ridiculously obvious. The show tries to create a mystery around who he is, but it's so poorly done that you can see through it from a mile away. And the reveal of Halbrand as Sauron is so heavily foreshadowed that it completely lacks any impact. The relationship between Galadriel and Sauron is especially cringeworthy, turning a once menacing villain into a cheesy, lovesick character. It's like they tried to recreate the tension between Aragorn and Arwen, but ended up with something as awkward as Sam and Frodo sharing that almost kiss moment. In conclusion, The Rings of Power Season 1 is like trying to fight off a Balrog with a block of butter. The show takes Tolkien's rich, complex world and reduces it to a shallow, poorly written mess. Characters are ruined, pacing is a disaster, diversity is handled in a way that feels forced and unnatural, and the show misses the heart and magic of Tolkien's work entirely. Instead of the epic tale we were promised, we got a generic, forgettable series that fails to capture the spirit of The Lord of the Rings. For Tolkien fans, this show is a huge disappointment. The creators had so much amazing material to work with, but instead they gave us this watered-down version of Middle-earth that doesn't do justice to the source material. What a disaster. This show should have stayed lost in the mines of Moria. Anyway, those are my thoughts on this. If you disagree, let me know in the comments and tell me if you're looking forward to Season 2. Also, what did you think of my terrible jokes? If you liked them or hated them, consider subscribing, and until next time, peace out.